did. You guys go pick that thing up. And it was
Chewing you all right.
apparently very good.
I was gonna say that, well, I will say the four important commissioners are here to constitute the quorum. Better believe it.
You can say I would. They're not getting anybody, they get the game. You can't hold a straight face, you better to the left there.
Good.
Always.
I wanna call this, Dalton, Varnell, Whitfield County Planning and Zoning meeting to order. Let the record reflect that we have 5 important commissioners present, and, I'm sorry, 4, can't count. And that constitutes a quorum, and at this time, I'll turn it over to Chairman Litterdale.
Thank you, sir. First order is to call quorum. We do have 4 members present. Mr. Pennington and Mr. Perez are absent tonight. Second item is to approve and correct the minutes from the previous meeting, July 29th. Can I get a motion?
So move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Third item in the general section is not listed, but we need to have an election for officers for the next coming year. Can I get a motion?
We're doing the same as we were before? I nominate Jim, Chair, Chris, Vice Chair?
That's perfectly fine with me.
Okay, that's a motion. Second motion by Mr. Barr. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get to this meeting, I'm going to recognize Mr. Ethan Calhoun from the Northwest Georgia Regional Office, and he will go over the procedures and processes for tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, the meeting tonight will follow our set agenda, which you can see on the screen. We also have copies out front on the table, if anybody would like to have a copy. And the chairman will govern the meeting and essentially open and close each item tonight. Purpose of the meeting is to hold a public hearing for each of the rezonings on the agenda. The procedure for each hearing will be exactly the same. And that procedure will be, first and foremost, the chairman will open the public hearing for that agenda item. I'll come forward and give a short presentation. Then the chairman will ask for the petitioner. That would be the person tonight who's requesting to rezone their property or their representative to come forward to the podium and answer any questions or make any additions to the previous statements. Once the petitioner's comments have been heard, the chairman will ask for anyone who would like to speak in favor of the rezoning other than the petitioner. Once all comments in favor of the rezoning have been heard, the chairman will ask if there's anyone here tonight who'd like to speak in opposition or against that particular item on the agenda. If you're here tonight to speak in opposition of any of the items on the agenda, there are forms out front, next to the agenda we mentioned on the table, out beside the door. And it's imperative that you fill out that opposition form. And we have 2 forms, one for the city of Dalton and one for Whitfield County. On the agenda, it will note at the end in parentheses whether or not that agenda item is in the city or in the county. And you just need to make sure you fill out the correct form. That's a state law. It also helps us make sure that we get your information correct in the minutes. So if you fill out an opposition form, you sign the form, please print your name clearly for the record so that we can have that listed correctly in the record for any comments that you make. Once all comments in opposition have been heard, the chairman will give an opportunity to the petitioner to come forward again and address any of those concerns that were raised in opposition's remarks and rebut. If no new evidence is presented by the petitioner in their rebuttal, then the chairman will then close that public hearing and move to the next agenda item. Once the public hearing has been closed on that agenda item, there will be no further public comment to be heard. Each of those agenda items, again, will work exactly the same way procedurally. Once all public hearings have been held, the chairman will move into the regular meeting. And that's where the planning commission will deliberate and make a recommendation, which will be sent forward to the board of commissioners and the mayor and council of the city of Dalton and the city of Barnell. And that's where they'll make their final decision at their following meetings, likely next month in September. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ethan. First item to be heard is Diane Tambui to change zoning from R2 to R5, tract of land 15 acres located along Cleveland Highway, parcel 11-264-01-011. This is in the county. Ms. Bui, are you here? Diane Tambui? Looks like she's not here. We'll have to table this till next month.
No, sir, it would get an automatic negative recommendation because she wasn't here last month.
Oh, she wasn't here last month either, okay. We need to go for the record on that, or is that just automatic?
When you're going through, I mean, you can just
Okay, we'll just,
note it.
we'll deny it then. So the next one is to hear from Michael Kucharski, seeking to rezone 2.02 acres, 3950 South Dixie Highway, from R6 to R7, to build 11 additional apartment units. This is in the county also. Mr. Kucharski, you were here?
I'm Scott Crowell, I'm the engineer record.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Ethan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item on the agenda is this rezoning here with Mr. Kucharski, the petitioner, with the proposal to rezone the subject property from transitional residential to high-density residential R7. Currently, the subject property contains 3 single-family detached dwellings and a 7-unit apartment complex, and the petitioner's request is in order to add an additional, or add up to an additional 11 units. When we look at zoning in this area, this is one of the areas that converges several different zone districts. The rural residential, you can see, abuts the property. You've got general commercial and heavy manufacturing in this area as well, the subject property being that transitional residential, R6. As we move to development of this area, you'll see that for the most part around the subject property, we see single-family detached development. The adjacent property to the northeast is a church. So what we see mostly are residential and quasi-commercial type uses. The subject property is somewhat unique in that it has several different types of residential structures, from single-family dwellings to that apartment unit complex. Currently, even though it's transitional residential, it would be in a non-conforming status. That zone district does not permit multiple primary dwelling units on the single tract of land. It also doesn't permit any density over that of a quadplex on a single tract of land. So subject property currently exceeds its legal density based on the zoning ordinance, but it does so in nonconformity. So it can continue as such in perpetuity as long as it isn't vacated or demolished for more than 12 months. Based on, again, the subject property's current structure, you can see, or current developments, you can see the structures on it there. It's also an access easement accessing property further to the southwest. When we look at the future development map and the joint comprehensive plan, this is another area of convergence coming between the emerging suburban areas, industrial, and nearby the interchange character area. And ultimately, looking at this area, again, the subject property is already somewhat of an outlier and unique as compared to the majority of adjacent property in its density. It does have ability to tap on to public sewer. The site engineer, petitioner's engineer may be able to speak in further detail to that, but we have seen the documentation from Dalton Utilities that this property could be served by public sewer. Historically, it has been served by on-site septic. It would be critical if this property is rezoned that all units on this property be tapped into public sewer for concern of public health with this much density on a single tract of land. With that being said, altogether, the site plan you can see here very quickly, proposing up to an additional 11 units toward the rear lot of the subject property behind the existing apartment complex. Based on the site design of the subject property, this is sort of an ad hoc, multifamily type design. It's not a contiguous design in terms of the site plan that we have. We do not see accommodations for stormwater and those types of things that we would like to see. We have some concerns with accessibility, potentially fire accessibility and access. With all the factors in consideration, the staff recommendation is to deny the rezoning request to R7. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Ethan, is that a functioning apartment complex there now with the 7 units?
Yes, that's correct.
And they are not in conformity, right?
That is correct. But you're right, they are non-conforming status, so they could continue. This rezoning would simply allow them to add additional density.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Sir? Representative from
Good evening, my name's Scott Caldwell, engineer of record for Michael Karjewski. And as Mr. Ethan, or I'm sure his last name, but Ethan stated. Calhoun, sorry. And the owner is wanting to add additional 11 units to the property. I had one question, Mr. Calhoun. You stated that the property is non-conforming right now, but if it's rezoned, would it be conforming to that zoning?
Depending on setbacks.
Yes, so that was the, I guess the request is to put it in, the current, or, request for the rezoning to R7 so that he could add additional units. And of course, this site plan that I provided isn't saying that, he wants to put 11 units. It's just what could go there, but I guess my discussion with Mr. Calhoun sometime, I guess it might have been last week, about stormwater requirements, that they would have to be met. So those units may not be, but I'm just saying 8 units to adhere to the stormwater requirements and other requirements.
And Ethan, you said something about access?
It's very similar to the rezoning we had last month with the number of structures on the site and setbacks, building separation, and parking.
But safety could get in there? Sort of.
Usually by fire code, it's 150 feet that the access has to be provided, and you have to have a cul-de-sac or some kind of turnaround feature like a hammerhead, a Y, or a cul-de-sac. I'm not saying that can't be provided, but it's a 60 feet diameter cul-de-sac, so that site plan does not show it, but could be placed there to accommodate that.
So he would be amenable to those requirements being met?
Yes, I mean, it's not saying that this is what is going there, it's just that, just showing him and what he's wanting, but of course, stormwater requirements would probably eliminate some of those. I don't know how many, I haven't done the exact calculations, but if it had to adhere to stormwater, some of those would go away, or if he put them underground, but that starts, underground detention becomes very costly, so, but, and then the turnaround feature could be added, to adhere to fire safety, so.
Questions? None? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you for your time.
Is anybody who'd like also to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? That said, we'll move on to the next request. Next request is from Charles and Janice Aaron, seeking to rezone from GA to R2, 6407 Highway 2. This property is in the county. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have here this request to rezone just a little over 5 acres of subject property from,
Ethan, I didn't ask if they were here. Charles and Janice Aaron, are you here? Okay, just want to make sure you're here before we go through all this, and, it doesn't matter. Go ahead.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request will be to rezone from general agriculture to low-density, single-family residential. The current state of the subject property is that it contains 2 single-family detached dwellings, one of which is in the final stages of construction. Their request is in order to rezone is to divide the subject property in order to separate the petitioner's dwelling from their son's new dwelling and create 2 individual lots. In order to do that, because of the size of the subject property, minimal lot size in the general agriculture district is 5 acres, so there would be no way to possibly divide the subject property in a manner which would create multiple tracts at 5 acres each. So the only alternative they had was to rezone. And we can see that in this area, that lime green color on the zoning map is the R2 zone district, so we do see low-density single-family all around. And of course, that's the second most restricted residential zone district in the zoning ordinance. So from an impact standpoint, this is very minimal impact to the area. Only single-family detached type structures will be allowed. No manufactured homes will be permitted. No duplexes or anything like that, so it's a very conservative zone district. We don't see any potential for negative impact, and it certainly wouldn't change the character of the subject property, being that you can have 2 single-family detached dwellings on a single tract of land in general agriculture. So the character would remain the same, and we can see the development of this area is very low density, but again, we can see residential, smaller lots in the area. When we look at the subject property, you can see it up close. Again, low density, 2 single-family dwellings currently occupying 5.01 acres. And it's within the Rural Agricultural Reserve, which again, general agriculture is the best zone district for this character area, but the low-density, single-family R2 zone district is a very conservative residential zone district. And we do see it adjacent to the subject property to the south, as well as throughout this area. So we don't anticipate this having any sort of change in the character of the area. It certainly doesn't threaten the agricultural integrity of the area. With all that in consideration, the staff recommendation is to approve. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
None. Thank you. Charles, Janice, step forward. No, not unless you want to.
She's scared.
Don't trust her.
I am too. Do you have any questions? I mean, Mr. Calhoun pretty much covered it all.
Okay, so you have, both those houses are on the property now?
Well, my house is complete. We're living in it now.
Okay,
And my son's house is partially built. And then we found out we couldn't have 2 houses, so we had to come see you folks.
okay. Questions?
All good.
That's it? That's tough? Yeah, very good, thank you. Anybody else like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Farewell. We will move on to the next request. The next request is from David Helton Jr. seeking to rezone from R2 to GA. Parcels at 3136 Helton Road. This item is in the county. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Again, sorry. Mr. Helton, are you here? Very good, thank you.
The proposed rezoning here is to rezone from low-density, single-family residential to general agriculture. This tract of land is 38 acres, and we can see that The subject property currently contains a single-family detached dwelling and the barn structure. When we look at zoning in this area, it's very clear that the R2 zone district is lime green color. It's the most predominant zone district adjacent to the subject property and throughout this area. But we see R5, there's even R7, and some GA in this area. So it's an area of somewhat transition in density and development. But again, we see the general agricultural is not too far away from this property. And the request essentially is in order to restore conformity to the subject property as it has been used for agriculture, low-intensity agriculture, some livestock and agricultural operation for a number of decades. The petitioner can answer into greater detail regard to that. But we can see, based on the aerial photograph for development in this area, we were looking at a mostly pastoral property, and that's the majority of adjacent property to the north would fit the same character. So when we look at the subject property and its ability to be divided and developed, it is somewhat limited in that road frontage, the depth of the property without a major construction or major subdivision of the subject property. The R2 zone district would be difficult to add much density to the subject property, similar to what we see throughout this area. When we look at the future development map, we can see it is between the emerging suburban area and the suburban neighborhood character area. So the emerging suburban is anticipating areas that may accommodate additional growth in the future, which the subject property certainly could at some point in the future accommodate growth, but again, that would likely come in a major subdivision, which is not the current intent of the petitioner. And when we look at the potential for impact in this area, again, mostly low-density, single-family residential adjacent. With that in consideration, there is a fair amount of topography on the subject property, including some water features on the property that'll make it difficult to develop for things like high-intensity agriculture, like commercial poultry operations. However, if there is a concern for that, that can be made a condition as part of the rezoning that would limit that type of agricultural production. The petitioner indicated absolutely no interest in that and can answer to that in further detail, but would like to be able to have livestock and utilize the property for agriculture. With all that in consideration, staff recommendation is to approve. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
None, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Help. Any additional comments?
Oh, sir. Just following the recommendations of Ms. Jean.
Okay,
Doesn't steer you wrong.
very good. No question from us? Thank you, sir.
Thank y'all.
Anybody else would like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Very well, I'll close that request. The next request is to hear from Carrie Edwards and Gregory V's to rezone from suburban agriculture to R5 at 3.32 acres, 4673 South Dixie Highway in the county. Are the petitioners here? Okay, very good. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The rezoning before us to rezone from suburban agriculture to rural residential is made in order for the petitioner to be able to divide a single tract of land from the subject property in order to locate a manufactured home for a family member. As the property is currently zoned, they would not be able to divide the property because it is only a little over 3 acres, and each tract in the suburban agriculture zone district must have a minimum of 3 acres. So again, similar situation. There's no way to divide the subject property without a rezoning for a lower lot size. And the R5 zone district would allow this to be accomplished. The needs of the petitioner, as well as when we look at the zoning map, we can see the R5 zone district adjacent to the subject property and sporadically throughout this area along South Dixie Highway. So from a zoning standpoint, we see similarity to the area. From the aerial photograph, we can see a mix of development throughout this area. One particular thing to note was across the street, you may recall the meat processing facility about a year or two ago that came before us for a conditional use in the agriculture zone district. This is in that area, so there's a fair amount of diversity in land use in this area, from residential, agriculture, conditional uses. The subject property, based on our observing of this area, is not out of conformity or out of character with what we see here. Again, we can see a closer view of the subject property. As you go back, you can see there's a church, another church building just to the north of this property, and again, the meat processing facility and home is across the street. And we do see some manufactured housing throughout this area, particularly west of the subject property. There's a small manufactured home park. We're within the rural neighborhood revitalization character area, and this is a character area intended to incentivize investment into the rural community for additional development and redevelopment. Based on the character of the area and the proposed plan that the petitioner has brought forth, we don't see this as being out of alignment with the character of the area, and the staff recommendation is to approve. Happy to answer any questions.
No questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am?
So basically, everything he said's correct, except for the dividing of the property. And it is not a manufactured home. We purchased a large shed that the inspectors, what are they called? Somebody called somebody, and I had a inspection done, and they said that the building was too big, and because it was divided in the center, it could be construed as a residence. It is just a shed. So we've been in contact with the inspecting office, and we have hired a contractor to conform as a shed.
To make into a shed?
It is a shed,
Okay, but not to improve it, or?
yes. They're working with us on that, and we've hired a contractor so that we can conform with zoning. Mr.
It
Stevens,
won't be a residence at all. It'll just be a shed for,
that's what they're telling us we have to do, yes. Right now, they're saying it's like a tiny home or whatever, because it was delivered on wheels. We haven't had the chance to
And
put
it
it,
has a bathroom and a wall.
put it on a foundation yet. What is that office called?
The inspector's office, or not inspectors, but the county,
Building inspector?
Code enforcement.
code enforcement.
Yes.
Like a nosy neighbor come up, in other words.
So they saw the prefab unit on wheels with the bathroom, thought you were putting a mobile home in there.
It's 12 by 30, and it was brought on wheels, and they have not come off yet, so they immediately assumed it was a tiny home or whatever. And I guess it could be construed that way, but that's not the
Purpose.
purpose of it.
Just for storage or vehicle or equipment, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we're gonna spend a lot of time up there doing things we don't do on our home property.
We take care of both of our mothers, and so we have outgrown our home. So this is gonna be like our little hobby and crafts.
Escape,
Yeah.
If we get away too.
yeah.
Huh? Sounds like, I guess it falls within the zoning. Ethan? Are you still on board with this, what he's saying? I mean, is it make what you understood?
I believe so.
Okay.
If you spoke to Mr. Stevens at the, what's it called again?
Code enforcement.
Yeah,
Code enforcement, he is working with us, and all his demands were that we hire a proper contractor to get it on a foundation and do away with the appearance it needs another egress as well. Because the building is so big and it has a dividing wall, there's only one entrance. He needs two. So we're gonna conform with all that. And I've already got over $50,000 invested in moving some trees and putting this building there. So he's working with us, and we're hiring a contractor to conform to whatever needs they have.
So you basically gonna put it on the foundation, put another door in it, and it's gonna be an auxiliary building?
Correct. And she's gonna be working from home in the next year and a half to take care of our parents. So it could be used as an office from time to time. They said that the restroom's not an issue. It's the fact that it could be construed as a dwelling at this point.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you. Does anybody else like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Very well. We shall move on. Next item is to hear requests from Asif Sheikh to rezone from R2 to R5, 4 acres, located at, looks like 310 Keith Street. Is that correct? I got a 0 in front of that. 7 acres, okay. Mine came out at 0. 7 acres at 310 Keith Street. And this is in the county. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The rezoning we have before us now is a rezoning request to go from low-density, single-family residential R2 to rural residential R5. This,
Excuse me, Ethan, I've done it again. Mr. Sheik, are you here? Okay, thank you. I think you probably need to remind me before you start.
Will do.
Okay.
So the request is essentially to rezone these 3 tracts of land, 3 parcels. You can see those on the map on the screen, from low-density, single-family residential to rural residential. The petitioner's request is in order to construct some new single-family detached dwellings on some smaller tracts of land, primarily along those eastern 2 tracts, with also having the potential to develop some additional density on the northernmost portion of the parcel, which you can see has road access or street access as well. And the petitioner made note that some of the developments or some of the lots that would be developed would contain single-family detached dwellings and also potentially in the future duplex dwellings. With the zoning in the area, we can see the convergence of 3 different zone districts surrounding the subject property, the R2 zone district being probably the largest, converging with the R3 medium density residential zone district is the second largest in the dark green color. We also see the heavy manufacturing zone district, which is the unusual outlier here adjacent to the subject property to the south. When we look at development of this area, the subject property is heavily wooded. There is 1 manufactured home on the subject property as it stands. The petitioner's proposal, as I understand it, is to replace that manufactured home. They can potentially speak to more detail about their development plans. But when we look at this area, what we see for the most part is low density or medium density, single family detached residential development along this area and along the street, Keith Street. We do see the manufacturing operation, but again, that's accessed from a different street and pretty detached from the subject property, both topographically as well as pretty well buffered by the mature vegetation. Closer look, you can see that on the aerial photograph. And within the comprehensive plan, it's noted as the suburban neighborhood character area. The whole intent of the suburban neighborhood character area is to protect the integrity of the established subdivision developments that already exist and to ensure that any zoning or new development that would occur within these character areas would be reflective of the character that's been established within those neighborhoods. In terms of single-family detached development, there would be absolutely no contrast with the established development pattern on Keith Street whatsoever, with the R5 zone district's density. We don't see any, however, adjacent duplexes around the subject property, and with the exception of the manufactured home on the subject property, we don't see any consistency in manufactured home development in this area. With all that in consideration, staff recommendation is not to approve the R5 rezoning, but to rather approve an R3 medium-density rezoning, which would grant a higher lot density, a smaller dwelling size that would be reflective of what's established in the area without creating any dissimilarity or creating an entering wedge for additional density in a predominantly low-density single-family or medium-density single-family neighborhood. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
None? Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you.
Mr. Sheik?
I guess whatever Mr. Calhoun said,
Your name and address, please.
Asif Sheikh. That's it. Whatever he said, I agree with it.
So you're okay with R3 rather?
That's fine. I mean, I would like to get it because there's a potential for that site in the back, the bigger acreage of it. There's actually 3 different parcels, a 310, and then I believe 3, anyway, there's 2 up front and the one big site in the back. So that would be a huge benefit, but if it's not available, it is what it is.
What is the access to the site in the back? How do you get to it?
So there's 2 different sites access, which we discussed with the zoning officer before. Right there at the second lot that you see there, we will leave about 25 feet of road access going to the back, and the back side also touches another road in the back as well.
Okay.
Which if you really look at it, that there's already a city road that was supposed to be there, somehow it stopped. Yeah, the highlighted area there, you could see that. So we could basically have that attached back or just leave some road frontage to get the access to the back. But keep in mind, I am trying to get nicer homes, get a little bit of a development in a such way that we're going to be removing some of the manufacturing home setup out of there, so.
Well, it sounds like that intent, that R3 would still be just as good for you.
Still be fine, but I'm just saying if it would limit me to the road frontage area to where we're able to get about 5, now it would be down to 3, so.
Other questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Does anybody else like to speak in favor? Anybody want to speak in opposition? Okay. First hand was here.
I'm Larry Engel. I've lived in that area there all my life. And there's several things that I think are wrong with putting a house in there, any houses. One is picking up extra traffic on Keith Street. It's only 22 feet wide. And if you happen to be meeting a UPS truck or something like that, you got to get out of his way. I mean, that's one of the problems. A few years ago, Bill Nagel tried to develop that. And it's like the land comes this way. And he couldn't put sewer in there of any kind without putting a pumping station, which was pretty expensive, and he failed to do that. That's one of the problems. And then we just really don't want it. And I don't understand coming from R5 down to R3. That wasn't in the paperwork that we have here.
Ethan, would you mind explaining just the difference in R5 and R3 for him?
Yes, sir, because the petitioner requested a higher intensity zone district, then we can recommend a lower intensity zone district as part of that. And the R3 zone district would only permit site-built, single-family dwelling. So there couldn't be manufactured homes or duplexes or any kind of multifamily development. You can only have one home per tract of land.
How many homes can be put on this property?
That's difficult to say without a more thorough site design.
Mhm.
There's a lot of topography, as you pointed out, that would affect the property. There is a stream that travels through north and south that bisects that large tract, so there may be a number of factors that affect ultimately how many units, because if those waters are state recognized, then there would be 50-foot buffers minimum associated with any development. So without a better site design or better plans, it would be hard to determine exactly how many.
Back when I was about a 5-year-old boy, there was a family lived at the corner of Keith Street. And there were 6 or 7 people living in a 2-room shack. And they carried water from down there off of this property, is Wet Weather Spring. And there's several of those things in it. And they carried their water. They couldn't get water. But that spring is still down there.
But even if I understand correctly, the two smaller tracks to the east, each of those tracks could have how many houses on the small?
They could probably double the density just bigger now, probably get an additional 2 lots.
So potentially 4 houses right on Keith Street. And then the larger piece that's got the water feature and the topographical challenges, be unlikely probably that they would get very many in there.
Probably.
Just a few. Okay.
But that, where he was planning on having a road joining Keith Street on the north end there, along in there is where that Wet Weather Springs at.
Well, he would have to get through permission through the county for a lot of this stuff, through the county inspector.
Does that not get into that blue water thing?
Could, very possibly could. I mean, he would have to, as Ethan said, if this was R3, you know, the developer would have to come out with an actual engineered site plan. And it would show how many, you know, and that engineer would, you know the regulations and the rules and the setbacks and, you know, buffers and all of those things. And he would come back with a plan that shows, you know, 3, 4, 5, however many, you know, building sites to divide that property. And then at that point, it would be up to the county to approve that plat and, you know, all of those type items. But that's a different process.
Yeah, he couldn't build just whatever he wanted.
Right. And they
He would be restricted to what the county engineers would say.
Yeah.
The property north of that, which belongs to Christian Heritage School, it's got a good stream running through it that comes out of that property. And they rejected because of the blue water thing. In other words, when Mr. Nagel wanted to put those houses in, he was going to have to go down that property line to reach a pumping station. And because it was on the blue water, they wouldn't allow it.
So if this ended up going R3, if that's how it all ended, the 2 lots right there on Keith Street, as Ethan said, probably you may be able to end up with 4 houses there on Keith Street on 4 separate lots as opposed to the 2. But the bigger lot has got so many issues, it would be totally dependent upon what the engineer, said for the site plan, the county and the blue water and all the things that, you talked about. And I mean, that's a whole other process, beyond the scope of zoning, but it would probably limit what he could build there.
Well, that's kind of what my neighbors and myself feel like, that it's just not practical.
Yeah,
We'll probably get to that point.
Okay?
yeah.
All right, thanks, sir.
Thanks for listening to me.
Have your name and address for the record?
My name is Gary Oathby. I live at 212 Key Street. We also have property at 301 Key Street. My wife has lived down there all her life. I've lived for 54 years. It was zoned R2 for a reason, to keep single-family, low density in there. I don't see moving it up to R3, leave it like it is. If it can comply with what he needs to comply with. Where the mobile home is, years ago, that's got a lot of field dirt under it. It was hauled in, the stuff come in, and it wasn't compacted. There was rocks and debris. As far as the water situation, there's also a spring on the south end of it that comes under the road and feeds through there. And I was told 50-something year ago that they started trying to build in there, and the wastewater would leach into the stream that's running down through there. Our property, other property at 301 is on the east side of Key Street. There was a well on that property 50-some odd years ago that was only 20 foot deep, and it hit water. So the water level is at road level at least, because that property over there rises up. The property that's wanting to be rezoned is going on down. It's also got springs on it and water, and I believe that unless it is pumped into the city, I believe groundwater would leach into that spring and also branch and contaminate the spring and come in there behind Christian Heritage. And as Mr. Engel said, the traffic on that street, we have had population increase in Dalton, and there's 2 establishments up at the end of the street that on Saturday and Sunday night, you can't get but 1 vehicle through there because they park on both sides of the road. Have called law enforcement many times, and they've moved them, but they just keep moving back in. And this is elderly and people that's lived there all their lives, and I personally would like to see it, if nothing else, stay R2, and if it complies with the groundwater and other things, that'd be fine. But personally, I'm against it.
All right, thank you, sir.
Appreciate your service.
I think we had another one in the back.
I tell you, there's a lot of wildlife, deer, foxes, raccoons, and all that in that property.
My name's Richard Torres. I'm Larry Engel's neighbor, but all I want to say is I agree with Mr. Overby and Mr. Engel on the whole spring situation. Not only that, the environmental impacts it will have on the streams, the animals that's back there, especially, turtles, these endangered box turtles and everything, and salamanders, everything that runs in behind Christian Heritage. But, and like I said, we already got a high volume traffic that goes through there, and that's gonna implicate more problems in the near future if this housing development, proceeds. But, other than that, let's see here, the land itself back here is not good for development. I mean, you got ridges on both sides. I mean, you're gonna take risk is, a lot of construction vehicles going down there blocking up entryways for people to get in, out and go to work, and it's not a good project for homes to be developed, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir.
Sir, could you fill in the paperwork?
Huh? Oh, I got one back there. so you can do that.
Okay, just give it to him. All right, Mr. Shake, do you have a rebuttal?
So I guess there's two things. Spring water, I agree. Wildlife, I agree too. But somebody has to go out and inspect it. That's also cause of probably a lot of bacteria and stuff. Right now, there's a lot of people dumping and trash back there because it is the two ridges that we're talking about. So nobody's really cleaning, nobody's taking care of it. So what we're trying to do is clean up that area just enough to the adjacent, to the springs. We will never really go near the springs or the water or whatever. So I just want to make sure that it's very clear that, yes, I understand the traffic situation, but if you look to the right, to the left, they're already zoned for that, And what we're trying to do is just get a nice single-family homes, get into the area. But I'll let my, a friend talk on that behalf as well, okay?
Okay.
Hi,
Your name?
Dan Combs Jr. You need my address too, or no? Okay. What Mr. Asif is trying to do here, these front two lots, what we've got planned right now is 4 houses to go in there, like you were talking about a minute ago. Split the 2 existing lots into 4. The road frontage that he's talking about, taking 20 feet off the northern lot, coming in and coming back down, there's already a road bed in there. There's a tile, when you come down the hill from the corner at Key Street, at the start of that property, there's a tile there. There's already a road bed in there. I've walked it. So if you, the eastern property line right there, where it's coming from the curve of Key Street, just inside the property line, there's a tile there. There is a road bed that runs all the way up through there. The other road, if you look at the southeast corner of the big lot, where it turns and comes back south, you'll see that line, looks like a very thin lot coming up through there. That's actually supposed to be a city street. And then the street on the other side of the manufacturing hits the lot right there on the south side too. So there's potentially 4 or 5 different ingress and egress points for this lot. But that's well in the future once we get the front lots done, the houses built. And we're not talking about building, junk. We're talking about really nice 1,200 square foot, 2-bedroom, 2-bath houses, granite countertops, LVP flooring, nice houses. And then if we can, and it's like Mr. Asif said, we have to have everything inspected. The county has to come out, they have to look at the springs, they have to look at if it is blue water, they have to look at that, and we have to abide inside those regulations. We're not gonna be contaminating springs or contaminating streams or anything else. So I just wanted to clear that up. It's kind of, there's already a road bed in there. There's 2 more road beds coming in that were supposed to be city streets. I'm not sure what happened to them. Maybe over the years, they just let them go or whatever. But this is gonna be a really nice development in this area.
Thank you, sir.
No problem.
All right, we'll take one more. Let's try to keep it brief.
Hope everybody's doing good today. My name's Ralph Brooks. I live right across from Larry Engel on the other side of the road. I've been there 42 years probably. The biggest concern I've got, like he says, the road.
Push the microphone away from you.
There's not enough road for the traffic now on the road. Like you meet another car, you've got to pull over or stop to let them by. And he's talking about the road at the bottom of the hill on the north side where the tile's done put in. The reason they never put a road in there, when it rains, it floods. That is a flood area in there. You can't even get across the road sometimes where the stream runs over and floods across the road. Even my property is across from Larry's, and there's a wet weather spring behind my house when it rains a lot. Water even runs, and of course it's gonna go across the street there's a culvert there and a ditch. It runs in the ditch and it goes right to the stream down there. And if you block that stream, it's gonna back the water up on everybody if you cut that off. Cause it's bad now, you know. And that's all I've got to say.
All right, thank you, sir.
And like Larry says, we really don't want it. It'd be nice for him to move the mobile home out and build one nice house right there where the mobile home is. Thank you.
Sir, give it to him, please. Give it to Mr. Calhoun.
I'd just like to say again, years ago, from 301 Key Street, there used to be a dirt road that Larry Engel and them that rode the old strip downs across there, and they kept it up. This, as far as I know, I haven't seen that road in 54, 55 years. It's been growed up for a year. The north end, the road that's in there is a four-wheeler road where people have been riding through there. When they built the road and paved the road, like on most places, they'll put tile in to give you access to your property. I don't recall a road coming in from the north end from the Christian Heritage area. It's just where they put the tile in. You can look, it looks like a road up through there, but that was where they put the tile in.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think we're gonna close public hearing on this issue. And
For the record, that does appear to be a blue stream. Where I found it.
okay, the next item. To hear the request of Whitfield County Board of Commissioners to amend the Unified Zoning Ordinance text. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The proposal before us would be to amend the Unified Zoning Ordinance, replacing Article 2 in the definitions, the definition of junk vehicles, in order to allow the storage of junk vehicles in the R5 Rural Residential, SA Suburban Agriculture, and GA General Agriculture Zone District only when enclosed by a fence in addition to an enclosure within a structure and for other purposes. There's a greater definition of junk vehicles, goes into detail about the vehicles being inoperative, having been wrecked, dismantled, or partially dismantled, abandoned, or discarded. Does not have a valid license plate number, current year tag attached thereto. For purposes of this ordinance, a vehicle is inoperative if it is incapable of movement by its own power. The definition shall not apply to any vehicle within a carport, shed, or other accessory structure. This definition shall also not apply to any vehicle located upon a parcel within the R5 SA or GA zoning district if such vehicle is fully closed within a fence providing not less than 90% visual blockage, and which is not less than 8 feet in height. Such fence shall require a building permit and meet the International Building Code requirements and comply with the defined building setback for the zoning district in which the fence is located. As a summary of the text amendment, this would only affect the 3 zone districts mentioned and would be accompanied by those additional requirements. This would affect all 3 governments. It would go before Board of Commissioners, City of Varnell Mayor and Council, and the City of Dalton Mayor and Council.
Very good. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we adjourn, does the public need to comment on this? Is there any comment on this? All right, close that. Yeah, just want to make sure that before they got out. The next case is in the city. Edgar Rincon, are you here? to rezone from C4 to C2, 0.92 acres, located at 908 Elks Street for an event center. Ethan, this is in the city.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, you've summarized everything. The request from transitional commercial C4 to general commercial C2. The big difference between these two zone districts is that the transitional commercial zone district is intended to be, or intended to allow the same types of uses that you would have in the downtown central business district area, but require conventional setbacks and off-street parking. Whereas downtown, you have generally on-street parking and zero lot line. This allows the same uses, but with those conventional setbacks and off-street parking requirements. General commercial is, of course, a higher intensity commercial zone district that allows a larger amount of commercial uses. Essentially, most all commercial uses would be permitted in the general commercial zone district, and the conventional setbacks and off-street parking would be required. Looking at the zoning in the area, we see that there is basically an island of transitional commercial zoning, but we see around this area flanking that island of C4 mostly general commercial zoning and heavy manufacturing. When we look at the subject property and the development within this area, we see mostly commercial properties adjacent to the subject property. There is some industrial, but for the most part, we see basic commercial type development or vacant lots zoned for commercial use. There have been previous rezonings with the same transfer in this area from transitional commercial to general commercial, about 2 parcels to the south of the subject property. Again, we can see the subject property, its current character. You can see there's a large sort of commercial building, warehouse type building that's on the property now. Parking is somewhat limited currently on the property, and therefore any type of development of this property for commercial use or redevelopment would require parking code to be met. That would come forward with any building permits and any business licensing of the property. They would need to develop additional parking. That additional parking, as required in the city's code, would need to be, or the unified zoning ordinance would need to be asphalt, pervious pavers, or cement. And so there would be some improvements still necessary to make on the property for it to be viable for the proposed use. The petitioner could speak to more specificity on the exact proposal for the event center, but there is additional space for parking. And without a parking plan, it's difficult to know how many spaces could be created, but we can see there's 3 tracts of land as part of the subject property that are currently undeveloped and could be utilized for parking, as well as some other area in the front of the building where some parking currently exists. This is within the industrial character area, and of course, the industrial character area is geared more toward manufacturing, but I think we can all agree with this area and recent rezoning, recent development, that this is probably less likely, this area is probably less likely to see more industrial investment in the coming years and more likely to see things like higher density housing and commercial development as an extension of the downtown area. So the commercial rezoning of the subject property is not out of character with the area, and in this case, we don't believe is really in a conflict with the comprehensive plan, given the transitional state of the area. Recommendation is to approve. The rezoning is requested. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Nope, we don't have any. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Rincon?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for your time and service. Yes, I'm willing to comply with the
Name and
parking.
address, please.
Edgar and 908 Elk Street. And I'm the owner of this place. Bought it in 2003. We have an office for services. We've been serving the community as immigration specialist and also as tax preparers. So we've been saving money for this venue for years. And the only thing it's right now it's the parking lot. And I was gonna build that, but they told me to stop before coming here and getting an approval. So yes, I'm willing to comply with the parking, and I think we should have at least 70 parking lots on the back area. and another 25 to 30 at the front area. I also have an agreement with a restaurant, Guadalajara Restaurant. They don't use the back area. They left it alone, and it holds 20 parking lots. So he's willing to rent me that area for parking lot. Also, the front area is vacant. It's a very, very big lot, and I already spoke to the owner. He's willing to rent me the area for parking lot as well. So I don't see any issue for spaces. Besides, on weekends, on Fridays, there's after Friday night, there's nobody there on the weekends. And these events are usually on a Friday night or Saturday night for a wedding or a 15th anniversary for about 4 hours from 6 to 12. So I don't see any problems to comply.
Any questions? None? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Excellent. And we'll move on to the next request. Eloy Moreno, are you here? Okay. He's seeking to rezone from R7. And see what is he trying to get to here? C2, it doesn't have it on here. 0.14 acres at 709 McAfee Street for commercial storage. Ethan and Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you stated, the request will be to rezone from the high-density residential R7 zone district to the general commercial zone district. Just briefly gave an overview of what the general commercial zone district was in the previous case. Based on the subject property, the size of this property is just a little over 1/10 of an acre. It's a very small property, narrow. You can see it there on the zoning map. We can see that most of the property within the block that the subject property is located is zoned for R7 high-density residential. We do see some manufacturing zoning adjacent to the subject property as well. If we move into the development of the area, again, we see this community center, the Matt Gaston Community Center just to the east. We see residential development throughout the area adjacent to the subject property. There's also to the north an apartment complex that covers most of the block the subject property is a part of. So again, we see mostly residential development in this area. And ultimately, the issue with the subject property for commercial use is that the limited size, limited setbacks with C2, they would be required to meet conventional setbacks from all fronts, from the front of the lot, sides, rear lot, and would also be required to meet parking, off-street parking. And based on the size of this property, there's no existing building. We aren't even sure that this could be possible without a list of variances to accommodate it. And again, what we see adjacent to this property are various densities, single-family, multifamily development. So there would be no ability also to create any sort of a buffer between the subject property and any of the adjacent residential properties as well. So with all that in consideration, and the future development map within town neighborhood revitalization, given all the factors previously mentioned, lack of buffer and parking, other issues, lack of setbacks, this would not be a benefit to the existing neighborhood based on the intent of the town neighborhood revitalization character area. So the staff recommendation is to deny the request for C2. Be happy to answer any questions.
None? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Moreno? Your name and address?
Eloy Moreno, for 709 McAfee. So, like he mentioned, ideally we would like to use it as some kind of commercial storage, but if we could get it zoned to commercial, we would like to put either a convenience store there, possibly a hair salon, neighborhood commercial would be something that we could possibly do. There's not really any kind of convenience stores anywhere close to there. With the community center so close, I think that would be good spot for just somewhere for kids to grab a drink or something close by without having to walk too far.
Ethan, what are the differences in neighborhood commercial and just general commercial as it relates to setbacks, parking, that sort of thing? Would
Parking's
would-
gonna be very similar. Parking's generally based on the size of the structure and the type of use. So parking would be similar between C1 and C2. There would still be a required buffer. If it was less, it would still be difficult to accomplish that.
Yeah.
If needed.
You understand what
Yeah, I
what he's
understand.
saying,
If-
that the lot is so small.
Yeah,
that
and,
You have the setbacks and required parking. I mean, there's no room left.
There's not much left, but I still feel like there's enough where we could put something there. Where right now we are limited, R7, I think we can go back to single family. And again, we're limited because of setbacks, which none of the other houses along the street are following right now. So if we did have to go that route, we would have to be right back here trying to get a variance to push the house a little bit more forward. So that's why we're just moving into getting it zoned commercial. I know our setbacks are limiting, but it would not be a humongous building that we could set there. I mean, we understand our limits.
That
It's
and
just-
parking, yeah.
Yeah, and so,
I
I mean,
just
there's
don't-
there's a small structure in the back that, it's like a little storage. If it needed to come down, I mean, we could bring it down. There's no issue. But yeah, that's just something that I feel like we could potentially put in there.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Anybody else like to speak in favor? Anyone like to speak in opposition? Very well, thank you. We'll go on to the next request. Octavio Perez, do you have a representative here? Okay. Octavio is seeking to rezone from R3 to R7, properties at 509 to 511 North Hamilton Street, just to achieve use conformity. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The request we see on the screen is a request to rezone from the medium-density, single-family residential zone district to the high-density residential zone district, R7. Tract is just a little under 1/2 acre in size and contains a few parcels. When we look at the petitioner's request, it's in order to achieve conformity of the duplex dwelling that is there currently, as well as the rental dwellings, and bring the subject property essentially into conformity and create opportunity for future development. When we look at the zoning in the area, first thing we see is that subject property is at the convergence of the R7 and R3 zone districts. So this would not create an island or spot zone that doesn't already exist in the area. We look to the north and to the east, you see heavy and light manufacturing. So we do see some intense zone districts in this area. When we look at the development map, or we look at the map showing the existing development of the area, you can see the subject property. It's hard to see its state at this point, but you can see around it multifamily to the south, which you may recall that area on North Hamilton Street used to be the commercial building to the south was rezoned for high-density residential a few years ago. And this is that transition out of North Hamilton Street, north of downtown. So we see the old historic Crown Mill Village mostly over to the west, and then it transitions over into the old former manufacturing area of the city to the east. The subject property essentially lies right on that division. Here we can see a closer look at the property and the existing development. Again, you can see the three structures, one duplex, two single-family detached dwellings. And of course, the R7 rezoning would bring them into use conformity. Similar to the previous case we saw with lot size and setbacks, the existing dwellings on these tracts of land already encroach likely on multiple setbacks, so the structures themselves would remain in non-conforming status because of their lack of ability to meet setbacks. But if the subject property were ever redeveloped, then anything that would go back would have to meet the setbacks and required parking and et cetera within the R7 zone district. And That is ultimately the petitioner's request. Again, we don't see a conflict with this area. There's a number of multifamily developments throughout the Crown District. And so this would be in conformity with the established pattern of development and in the town neighborhood revitalization character area at this location. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Staff recommendation is to approve as requested.
None, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir?
I was gonna use an alias, but I can't.
No, you can't.
Ken Williams, 1206 Tacoma Drive. Octavio asked me to present this for him, but it's basically what he said, just changes on it, and it's gonna remain rental. It's, so won't anything change, but just the zoning is the only thing will change about it.
Okay. Questions? Nope. None, thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else would like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Thank you. That is the last request we will hear during our open meeting. We will now go into closed meeting deliberations. First item, gotta read that name again. Dan Tam Wee, apparently was here last month. You weren't? No, not here last month and not here this month, so this, there will be automatic denial. They will have to wait 12 months before coming again. Okay, the next one is Mr. Kucharski. Any comments on that? This one, staff recommendation was to deny. This was the additional apartments down South Dixie Highway.
How many you gonna put there, stormwater runoff? There's a lot of questions there that.
A lot of questions, leave it open to denial. Is that a motion?
I'll make a motion to deny.
Okay, Eric makes a motion to deny. Got a second?
One of us. Second.
Chris seconds. All in favor of denial, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. You got that, Ethan? I'm good. Okay, Charles and Janice Aaron.
Move approved.
Chris moves to approve.
Second.
Eric seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The aye. All opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Next one is David Hilton.
Move approved.
Chris makes motion to approve.
Second.
Jody seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Okay, Carrie Edwards, Gregory DeVries, South Dixie Highway. Located manufactured home.
Recommend we approve.
Jody makes recommendation to approve. Second.
Second.
Eric seconds. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Ali Sheik, hope I said it right, 310 Keith Street. This one, the recommendation is to deny. Issues were sewer, narrow street, leaching, if,
Or move to R3.
I would
or
second
moved to.
that.
Vote no, I didn't make a motion. Do that to me, Chris.
You're just
Hey,
discussing.
Ethan, how many houses could they put on there if it stays as is, R2?
3.
Probably 3, yeah.
Yeah, so if it goes to R3 as opposed to,
R2, which it is now.
yeah, you could get 4
On those front two lots.
on those front 2 lots, and then whatever you could get on the bigger tract, just depends. And I went to the GIS map and looked at the overlay with the blue water, and then there, right down the middle is there's a blue water stream down the middle, so.
So it'd have to be like this.
Yeah, and, you know, you look at the top of it, I mean, there are challenges building on that middle part, but, you know, like Dan said, there's some road beds and things that might allow some, so, and I'm not an engineer, but I think you could get 5 or 6 additional houses out of that bigger tract, all to the right, but I don't know, I mean, they may be able to do more than that.
Potential
but-
10
Yeah.
there.
But no mobile homes, no duplexes, none of that.
Which you can't do anyway, because it's R2, so.
Correct,
Yeah.
I mean, as opposed to what they were seeking, you know. It would be an extra, you know, 5, 6, 7 houses above what's there now, potentially. No, I don't know.
Well, I think definitely not R5.
Correct.
But, I mean,
I would be perfectly fine with R3.
is that your motion?
Is that a motion?
I'll make that in the form of a motion.
Chris makes the motion to approve with the designation of R3. Second,
Mr. Crowley?
your turn.
I don't see a problem with R3. It's gonna be a lot.
Is that a second?
That's second.
Eric,
They're gonna be limited on what they can do.
Eric makes a second. All in favor, say aye. For
Aye.
changing to R3.
So R3 rather than
Yeah.
R5.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
Move to approve the ordinance.
Definition of junk vehicles.
Junk vehicle.
Good to know.
Yeah, in my neighborhood, please. All right, motion,
I got it.
So,
I'll make a motion.
Second.
make a motion. Chris first, Jody seconds, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. Edward Rincon, that was from C4 to C2. Event Center, just off South Hamilton.
Motion to approve.
Jody makes a motion to approve.
Second.
Eric seconds, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
You did look so worried.
Still has,
Keep in mind that
Yes.
our authority is simply a recommendation to the city council and the county commissioners, and it'll come to their next meetings. They have the actual authority to approve, change, or they don't have to go along with our recommendations, but this is just part of the process, so. You still got one more meeting that you need to go to.
yeah,
Like a-
enjoy. Next one is Eloy Moreno. This is, staff was denied at 709 McAfee Street for commercial storage, the tiny spot.
I just don't see how you can do it.
Okay.
Moving it on.
Chris makes a move to deny.
Second.
Eric seconds. All in favor, say aye for denial.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. And the last one is Octavio Perez to bring into conformity 509, 511 North Hamilton Street.
Move to approve.
Jody makes a motion. Chris seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. And that closes the public portion of any input from here. We will be discussing a couple of plats. If you're not hear from them, you're free to leave.
I couldn't see him. Thank you. That's one lot?
You may not remember this, but it's been several months ago, Mr. Gordon came before you to rezone his property from SA to R5. And you allowed him to do that with the condition that he wouldn't put any duplexes on his property. And And that's really not what he wants to do. What he wants to do is subdivide these parcels for his family members. And you can see how he has created an easement going to all those large lots in the back, family easement. All these are going to family members. But he's created one flag lot, which contains that easement going out, touching Donville Road, and also a small tract that is a buildable tract. So he has to come before you with that flag lot permission. Does everybody see that, understand what I'm asking for? I'm asking you to approve.
So
that
that's
one
the
flag
bird's
lot.
eye view. This is all the breakdown, sorry.
Yes, all I'm
That's
asking
the
you to do is
bird's eye
approve that.
view.
Yes.
That's how he's breaking up all of this into his different family members' property.
With
So
the
all we're
flag lot-
doing is approving this one.
Right, that's all I want you
This
to do
one
is
down here?
approve that one
At the south
flag
end?
lot in yellow.
In yellow?
Everything else is a family easement lot going to a family member.
Okay, explain that to me. Paul. Flag lot in yellow?
Yes,
This is a flag lot? or-
yes,
Okay, so forget the easement, that's the flag lot.
right.
Gotcha.
I know it's
The easement is
an
the-
ugly
the-
piece of property.
The easement runs through that flag
That's
lot.
exactly right. This person will own the easement.
This Keith Lee?
Keith Lee Gordon will own it, yes. He'll be
Okay.
able to build on that small tract there, which is 232 by 110.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody else will be a family member coming off that,
All single family.
all single family only.
And this one at the very bottom, Keith Lee Gordon, that's,
Yes, he
That's-
actually
that's
has
no-
a business there. He
Okay,
doesn't
so-
have a house there, but a business.
gotcha.
I think he's a cabinet maker.
And then this is Donville Road?
Yes,
That's what
Donville
that
Road.
266 is?
If you'll see directly to the east, Charles True, you guys approved him last month to
Yeah.
rezone his property.
Yep, I'm good with it.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep, I'm good with it.
All right, motion.
As that person said, whatever Gene says.
I move we approve as presented.
Chris makes a motion to approve.
Second.
Jody seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
If I could just get my family to
Cooperate.
whatever I say.
Just get a shirt that say whatever Gene says.
Oh, I know this.
This is a city plat. You're probably going to recognize it as soon as I show it to you. This is Chick-fil-A on Glenwood Avenue. City plats, as you know, have to be approved by the planning commission. Chick-fil-A is purchasing this portion of the property that they own. This is where the old Red Food used to be, and I don't even know what's out there now, in that big shopping center
It's a,
area.
it's a Goodwill type place, isn't it?
It's a Goodwill place. But Chick-fil-A is that.
So they're buying the whole thing?
No,
just
Chick-fil-A
the-
is
yeah.
just buying the part in yellow.
Yeah, the out parcel.
I did bring this to you, not that you care about this, but they do have an agreement as part of their purchase to use some parking spaces that are
Mhm.
that are in the shopping center.
But
So
that's,
they'll be
that's
able to
separate, that's the.
Satisfy that.
Is this their normal MO to purchase? Are they purchase or are they lease type?
They have been leased, this portion leased up to this point,
Mm-hmm,
but they do want to purchase it
okay.
for, I don't know why. I mean,
Yeah,
Because
I
it's a crazy roundabout. You
Oh, yeah.
go around your elbow to get to your nose just to get in the drive-through,
You do.
kind of.
It's wild how the business model for Chick-fil-A has changed. I mean, they do, after COVID, they do way more out of the drive-through.
Oh,
than they
gosh,
used
yeah,
to.
yeah.
It's amazing.
I think a lot of their success has to do with their, as you say, their business model of the people that they hire and how they treat their customers.
And they're very
Did you see
efficient.
the one that is,
And they
when you
got-
drive through it, like
they
you
build
literally
these
drive
things
through the
and I've been
building
to their
and you
place,
eat
they
on
build
the
these
second
in their
floor?
warehouses
Oh,
to
I
see
see
how
that.
they can get people through and those.
They are,
things. So
they are
got
amazing.
In-house Chick-fil-A's and the employees can make any suggestions or try anything. It's pretty impressive.
But what about, I mean, does this affect any other businesses that are in that parking lot? Or, I mean, what do you do if you're what else is in that little thing? I mean,
They got the dollar only across the way to the south, I guess it is.
I would assume that agreement that you've got has got some reciprocal language in there that somebody that's going into one of the other stores could use the Chick-fil-A's parking.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of probably goes both ways.
Especially on Sunday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I believe it does say exactly that.
yeah.
so they just
Okay.
want to buy it so they can
Yeah.
probably not make you have to go all the way around the parking lot to get through to their
I
drive-through?
don't know what they're
I
planning.
think
No,
I still do.
I'd say everything's gonna stay like it
Yeah.
is.
I think it's gonna
But
Traffic
I would say
patterns
that
will
it's probably has to do more with maintenance and keeping up with it. It's theirs. You're not relying on a landlord and, you know,
Yeah.
all of that. They do their own stuff, probably.
It's a deep financial
Approved.
decision. Excellent.
So Jody?
Motion?
Yes, so
Jody?
moved to,
Chris seconds.
And,
All
you
in
know,
favor, say aye.
They might just be sitting with much dead cash and instead of paying rent. and
Yeah,
all
dead
that.
cash
You
for
know,
true.
just, you know, just buy it.
The money they spend.
we're adjourned.
I was going through the day and I'm kind of wondering, how much do they pay these kids? They've already started them at 18 to 19 an hour.
They do have a different caliber.
Yeah. They do have a different caliber, to politely put it. But, and they do a good job.
They do.
And I look through there and their sanitation scores are always 100, you know, perfect. And how do you operate something that big, with that many
I remember
kids?
going into one, going to, Atlanta one time, I can't remember where it was at. You went in and they had like flowers on the table and you go in the bathroom and they had like.
Chick-fil-A, is the one in Rome?
Yes, one in Rome, you're right.
That used to be a, what'd they call it, the house?
Used to be a dwarf house.
The dwarf house, yeah.
Yeah, that would kind of creep me out. Okay, bye, guys. See y'all next month.
Bye, guys.
Hey, guys.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Ethan's over there struggling with his paperwork.
Oh, yeah, never ends.
I'm gonna go to the restroom before I clean up, Ethan.
Okay.
There's sandwiches back there.
Oh, cool.
The Edwards V's, the man and woman, who said all they wanted was a storage building.